Hello and welcome to F1 Daily, your daily dose of Formula 1 right here on the F1 Word. Before I go any further though, big happy birthday to Mike010611 in chat. Hope you've had an awesome day, mate. But hello to everybody watching and to everybody else in chat as well. Great to have you with us and thanks for turning out for an interesting stream. There's not been any real big news today, if we're being totally honest. It's all kind of the fallout from Canada as you sort of expect on a post-race Monday, to be honest. I'm going to jump straight into what Sebastian Vettel has said, though, which, I'm not going to lie, didn't put my back up, but made me a little bit annoyed, because I don't think it's very fair for him to criticise fans for criticising Formula 1 after what we saw in Monaco and what we saw yesterday. To be perfectly honest, if you haven't caught his quotes, basically he's come out and said that the criticism from Formula 1 fans about Formula 1, the continued criticism, is unjustified, and went on to say that he doesn't understand why people are so short-sighted. Yes, if you sat through that race yesterday, then kudos to you, because, but anyway, I can't quite understand these comments. He said, racing probably like this. I don't think it's justified to criticise the racing or criticise this race. I don't know if it was boring from my point of view. Obviously, it's still busy inside the car, no matter where you are. I'd imagine it's not boring to be driving at those kind of speeds, to be perfectly honest. But there you go. From our point of view, we're watching it and it wasn't great. He said, I don't know why people today are so short-sighted. We've had 7 races this year. I think some were phenomenal, some were boring. And then he goes on to compare it to the World Cup, which bothers me a little bit. I'll come on to that in a moment, really, as to why. He says, next week the World Cup is starting. I promise you that a lot of games will not be exciting, but still people will want to watch it, and some games will be incredible. That is what we always look forward to. F1 races can't just continue to go up and get better. I think we do our job inside the car, and if we can race, we race, but obviously we also do our job inside the car and try to avoid racing. Disappear out front or not get overtaken. I get that. Before I go any further and start on one of my classic rants, because you know what I'm like, I totally get that, and I completely agree that he's got a job to do, and from his point of view, he's racing, and all the drivers, and I have to say, Bottas echoed this as well. This isn't just Vettel, I need to just clear that up as well. A few other drivers defending the sport, whilst others are criticising it, but I understand that. From his point of view, it's going to be exciting, he's got things to be getting on with, that's fine. From a fan's perspective, the people who pay the money to go and watch the sport, we have every right to criticise a bad race. If that makes us short-sighted, that's fine. I have said so many times, here he goes, on a rant, but I have said so many times, not every race is going to be a Baku 2017 or a Canada 2011, a Japan 2003. We're not always going to get that. That's a fact at the end of the day. You know, that's always been the case in Formula 1. But it's not the fact we're getting what people are calling boring races that really is an issue for me. What's bothering me is the fact that the current regulations are what is kind of causing the problem, if that makes sense. So you've got the tyre regulations, as we were discussing yesterday. Me and Jonty, had a bit of a go on that one. A bit of a downer yesterday, actually, to be honest. So I do apologise for that once again. But the tyres aren't right. The aero is wrong. The cars are far too wide. It just is not working, quite frankly, as it is at the moment. Add to that the fact you've then got 3 power units a season. You're limited on fuel and everything else. These guys... And I think this is what really gets me, and a lot of fans as well that I've spoken to today on social media kind of feel the same about this. That's the most annoying part, is that these drivers are admitting to driving slowly and nursing their cars to the end of the race. That, although part of Formula 1 at the moment, is definitely not racing. In Monaco, I'll always cut that some slack. I said it at the time. I'm not a big fan of the processional races we get there, but I'll always cut it some slack because it is Monaco. It is difficult to overtake. But when it starts happening on tracks like Canada, where you can overtake, and we always get, well, I say always, we usually get great races, it's completely unacceptable. And Harris and Duncan saying you can't blame the drivers, that's what I'm saying. They're admitting they're having to drive slowly because of the current regulations, and that's where the frustration is. But equally, the drivers can't then blame us for criticising the sport when it's... From my point of view, I've just paid to go to Silverstone. That's entirely my choice. I get that. If Formula 1 is boring, as some are saying, then that's, my fault if I pay the ticket price. But at the end of the day, I've paid for that. I also pay for Sky Sports F1. Don't I have a right to criticise? Don't you guys in chat that do the same? You surely have a right to criticise as well. And, I don't think that makes us short-sighted at all. Not in any way, shape or form. That's our right in that respect, in the same way that I'm sure Vettel will criticise if Germany screw up at the World Cup. He'll criticise some referee. That's as an example, and other teams as well. That's kind of
how it is.
Twigs30's made a contribution. Thank you very much. Says FIA killing the sport slowly. I'm hoping Liberty Media are going to sort this one out for 2021 and next year as well. I'm not convinced on the 2019 regs, but I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one. But his World Cup point, and this is something which was kind of in my mind anyway. I did spot somebody else say it on social media, so if you have said this yourself, I'm sure loads of people have. I do apologise. I'm not sort of copying anybody else. It's sort of thought I had anyway when it comes to football and Formula One. You can't compare the two in that respect. If a match in the World Cup is boring, you flick over to the other side and watch another match, which is probably going to be brilliant, an hour later. If you're watching Formula One, you will watch a Grand Prix, and if it's a rubbish Grand Prix like we got yesterday, just really not great, then you've got to live with that for the next 2 weeks. And if you have two back-to-back that were poor and one that was all right, then, yeah, you're going to be a little bit miffed by the time you get to the fourth in a row, if you like. Now, hopefully, we're going to France in a couple of weeks and Paul Ricard's going to be brilliant. Austria, as I said yesterday, a little bit hit and miss at times, can be boring, can be pretty good. Silverstone generally throws up an all right race. So hopefully, we're going to start turning this around now in the season, which is what we really, really need. But from a UK fan's perspective, and if anybody else has got Formula One going behind a paywall at the end of this year, then feel free to say in chat. I'm sure there are plenty of other countries as well. If Liberty have got any sense, they'll look at this, and I know there's not really an awful lot they can do in terms of regulations apart from sticking a third DRS zone onto tracks, which, as we've seen now twice, it makes no difference. They need to be looking at every race as an advert. You know, the UK is one of, if not its biggest market when it comes to Formula One in terms of TV viewership. It's one of the biggest attended races as well. If you are watching it, let's say it's not going to happen, but let's play devil's advocate, you know, we'll play that game again. Hypothetical situation. Every single race between now and the end of the season is crap. Is absolutely rubbish, and nothing happens. There's no overtaking, and the drivers are moaning about having to drive very slowly in order to nurse their cars to the end of the races. Would you turn around as a free to air viewer right now and pay the Sky subscription to watch it? Because even as an avid Formula One fan, I'm not convinced I'd be willing to. And that's kind of what is bugging me so much is with all this paywall stuff, is that Liberty have been dumped quite heavily on by the previous owners, we'll say, and that's kind of forced them into this paywall TV situation. But they've got to start trying to push advertise. It's kind of like advertising, you know, saying this race is an advert for next season, and new fans to F1 aren't going to want to stick around if they're all rubbish. That's kind of my opinion, and that's, you know, I don't know what you think in chat. Absolutely not, says 8421 huge. Okay, somebody says it's a joke. Biggest growth potential is the US. Absolutely. I pay for the F1 channel here in Bulgaria, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not feeling like I've spent my money well. It's a good point. Gabriel's made a contribution. Thank you very much. Said, I think it would be wise to make live races free. I agree. British says, God no, I have better things to spend my money on than a monthly bill. This is the thing, isn't it? And, you know, if the sport's great, I think people will pay for it. But if it's not great, then they're not going to. And I think Liberty are trying their best. I've got to give them credit. They're talking about these changes in 2019. They're saying to people, look, we're bringing the fan zones to races. We're trying to change things around the sport, trying to make it more accessible for TV. But that's not enough. You know, it's the racing. The fan zones are great. I get that. And the build-up in TV is good. And the things they're changing are very good when it comes to reaching out to the fans. But at the end of the year, they're going to lose a hell of a lot of fans. And there are people I know, people in the community, the F1 Word community over on Discord and on Twitter as well, that are young, sort of 14, 15 years old, whose parents aren't into Formula One, who won't buy Sky for them to watch it, and they're going to lose pretty much everything, obviously apart from an illegal stream. Red G says you don't just get F1 for your Sky Sports subscription. It's a difficult one. People keep saying to me they've slashed the price and it's like £9. It is £9 for Sky Sports in the UK for just Sky Sports F1, or £9.50, something like that. But you can't just buy Sky Sports F1. You have to buy one of their other packages, and that puts it to like £30 a month or something like that, which I know isn't a huge amount of money for me and others who work, but it is for people who can't afford that. That's a hell of a lot of money, and they've got better things to spend that on. And if the sport's not delivering, people aren't going to watch it, and that's just going to kill it. Another What the hell is another? English is failing me again today. Another contribution from Robert. He says, at least we have the archive now so we can watch some actual racing. Canada 2011 for the win. Followed the last 2 races using just BBC Radio and F1 app and didn't miss much by doing so. Defo not spending Sky 2019. That's the thing, F1 TV. We've got lots of the archive stuff, haven't we, which is fantastic. I just really wish they could do a deal with Sky. Apparently David Coulthard, I was talking to Chaz last night, I don't know if it was a joke, but he's on about protesting against it and trying to get a deal for Channel 4 or something like that. It'll not happen. That Sky do not have any kind of loopholes in their contracts. Believe me, I've tried to get out of them. They do not have any kind of loopholes. They are very much watertight, and I think any deal they did, yeah, I think we're kind of stuck with them. But, you know, the coverage is good. I've got to give them that credit, but you know, if we get rid of Crofty, maybe it'd be even better. But, you know, the coverage is good and it is worth the money, but the racing isn't at the moment. And maybe, you know, 3 races time, like I say, we'll feel a little bit better. We'll have had a few good races, hopefully, and we'll all be a little bit happier like we were after those 3 incredible races in Bahrain, China and Baku. You know, a few more of them and we'll probably be much happier. But at the moment, fans are on a downer. I completely agree. And I don't think it's fair for drivers to criticise fans for criticising, because it's our right, as I've said a couple of times. Take a couple of comments on this one before I move on to the next story. I overran on that by a whole, 6 minutes? Something stupid like that, but I just needed to say it. So there is a website that has literally every single race with the practice sessions and qualifying sessions on from 1980 onwards. I know the one you're on about. Sky are contracted to show F1 highlights free to air if the free to air broadcast drops out. But yeah, they are. But I think you still have to own a Sky subscription, don't you? I'm pretty sure that it will. I think it goes to Sky One, but I'm not sure. I'll double check that. It might be on one of their. What's that other channel called? It used to be called. I don't know what. I don't know. They have another channel that's like Variety or a mix of the things. But I'll have a look into that and we'll cover that one tomorrow if that is the case. Just make it free with ads. Nah, that's difficult. After the ITV fiasco, that's a tricky one. Can't blame driver for current regulations, therefore not much action on track. Absolutely. If only Crofty could stop his screaming banter on the start of the races. Paying £40 for this excuse for race. Dad is really disappointed. I can imagine it's Canada as well. We were bigging it up. It's supposed to be a good one and it all went completely wrong. The F1 weekend got spread over 5 channels in the US. Hardly a good way to attract new fans. I heard about that one actually, racing. That's a very good point. Tom Ashmore, there is a way to get free Sky F1, but shush. Well, let's move on. ITV was awful, I agree, Red G. I'm going to pop on to another story there. We'll get some more comments in a moment. Interesting comments coming from Renault in the last sort of 12 hours, I think it is. It was reported this morning. The original May deadline, which was extended by Renault to Red Bull, was pretty much rebuffed, wasn't it, by Red Bull? They were like, no, we want to make our decision for Austria. But Renault have come out and said that they are not going to wait till Austria for Red Bull to make a decision on their engine supplier. That, I think, is very interesting. They are very adamant, Cyril Abiteboul, very adamant that they hold the key to this. They've got control. The ball is in their court. It is not up to Red Bull when they make that decision. I've got a couple of quotes highlighted from him. It's quite a long one, so I'll just pick some out. And he says, I guess they have all the information that they need now. I don't see why they are going to further delay the decision. As per the regulations, the deadline was May 15th, and then we accepted to extend that a little bit on the back of 12 years of good collaboration. Fair enough. But past a certain point, the offer we made and that they have requested will not stand. He then went on to say a little bit later on, I don't want to start mentioning a date, otherwise you'll start calling me that date. I have a date, they know the day, but we are not talking about Austria. Austria, we won't be here, and they will be talking directly to Honda. So basically, in the simplest terms possible, you make a decision now or you're not getting a Renault engine and you stuck with Honda anyway. Reports over the weekend were pretty strong saying that they're going to be with Honda anyway, so I don't think it's going to make a big difference to Red Bull. I wanted to include this story though because I wanted to ask you in chat what you think for the future of Red Bull. Do you think it is going to be Honda? I've been saying it for a little while now. It's kind of a gut feeling I've got. It could be quite pivotal for Ricciardo as well, of course. It's going to be an interesting one this next couple of weeks rather, but I think it's looking like it's going to be Honda. And interesting from Ted Kravitz, I mentioned it yesterday, he was moaning on Sky saying that Honda have been very unreliable this year and that it's a real gamble, but Renault have been unreliable as well, so I don't think it's really that much of a gamble, to be honest. Obviously, they could screw it up again next year. We've seen it with Honda in the past. You know, they get there and then mess it up. But I just wanted to see. I am going to do a video on this probably later in the week. I will mention something as well at the end about this week's scheduling. Slight change to it for personal reasons. Nothing to worry about. But yeah. I agree. A lot of the chat saying Honda. I think do you think it's good for them? I think from a Red Bull perspective, to kind of get that works backing, I kind of get the feeling that they'd much rather have that than kind of a permanent customer supply from, say, Renault. Not permanent, but the next couple of years, if you like. I think a Honda supply has more potential, doesn't it? Is kind of what I'm trying to say. So I think that'll work for them quite well. The best they're likely to finish is third. If we're being honest, the absolute worst is probably fifth with a Honda engine. So yes, a little bit of money to lose there and possibly some credibility when it comes to the championship, but it's got to be worth the gamble just for the possibility of moving forward a little bit. Bye-bye Ricardo, said Ad Astra. If I said that wrong, I'm so sorry. Bye-bye Ricardo. It's going to be interesting to see what he decides to do. Ted is a stirrer. He can be, can't he? But I kind of thought I love his banter with Crofty on Sky Sports. I love it when Crofty says something and Ted shouts him down. I think that's brilliant. Red Bull could take good advantage of Honda's better packaging. Their chassis is good enough to take a risk for 2 years. Completely agree with that one. Imagine, look at what Toro Rosso have done this year, for example, with an inferior chassis. I think, yeah, definitely. They become a works team with the best chassis, which has many more pros than cons, right? Absolutely agree with that one. Nothing will change in the top three teams. I think it'll be closer if they go Honda with sort of Renault behind them and whoever is the fourth or fifth fastest team next year. But I still think Red Bull probably make top three, but they will fall back. I think Honda will do well, but I don't think they'll do as well as Renault have this year. Chassis will help. And this is the thing, isn't it? People keep saying chassis. They've got the chassis. Take the gamble. You know, they've got a great chance. They've got a great opportunity. That's just my view. I know there's going to be conflicting views on that in the comments afterwards as well, but very quickly on the third story, I've got a couple of on this days to do as well, so I'm going to quickly go through this one. The checkered flag incident, which is interesting. It's still been called an incident. That's been clarified by Charlie Whiting. Apparently, as we were talking about yesterday, it was basically a miscommunication between the start platform and the guy with the flag. He kind of handed what was her name? Winnie Harlow? I think it's Winnie Harlow. She was handed the flag and told to wave it a lap earlier. The guy that gave her that thought it was the last lap, but it wasn't. That was all it was. It wasn't her fault. As I said in the review earlier today, you know, it's not like she stood there, fingers and toes, counting the laps down. She was told to wave that. So I don't think it's fair that she's getting the criticism. I understand fans are annoyed that she showed no real passion for that and that you'd want a real fan up there. I totally get that, and I do agree. I think it should be real fans or people that are at least in, even if they are celebrities, somebody into the sport. Could you imagine someone like Rowan Atkinson up there? Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. You want a big star who is into the sport waving that flag with a bit of passion, so it means something to them, and we can see that means something to them. So I don't agree with her waving that, but it wasn't her fault at the end of the day. So I think that's the fairest way to put it. Go on then. A couple of comments on this one before I get on this day. Why not? It is annoying, says Rog Picks. She did us all a favour, says he. I've had a few comments like that one today, actually. Mr. Bean says Red G, that would be brilliant. She could have waved it after lap 24. You guys are not happy with yesterday's race, are you? You're really not. I can understand it as well. There's so much. People are just so gutted with it because it was Canada. I think if this had been, I don't know, Hungary, I think we'd be going, oh, well, it's Hungary, what do you expect? But I think it's the surprise, isn't it? But Will Buxton for commentary, that's a reply to Racing. I'd love Will Buxton in commentary with Martin Brundle. That would be brilliant. You'd get no BS there, would you? I agree with the fans doing it. It says Thomas. Mr. Bean doesn't have nice legs. Oh, dear. I feel bad for Danny Rick losing the fastest lap. Yes, absolutely. That cost him as well, didn't it? Yeah, I think it was brilliant seeing him find it out on Sky, though. That was actually quite funny, to be fair. I found that quite amusing. But yeah, that went to Verstappen in the end because obviously it was declared a couple of laps earlier under the rules, 68 laps instead of 70. So, it's caused a little bit of chaos, I have to say. And I don't know how this would work in Abu Dhabi, but thank God that wasn't for a championship. Could you imagine the absolute uproar if the title was decided on the final lap, but the flag had been flown a lap earlier and had to take the result from 2 laps before? There'd be bloody uproar. It'd be chaos. People would be going absolutely mad. So it is ridiculous that rule's in there anyway, because there shouldn't be mistakes like that. But I suppose this is human nature. It's a human element. Things like that do happen. Let's get on to this day. Like I say, I've got a couple that I want to do today. And on this day, back in 1995, Jean Alesi secured his first and only, I forgot it was his only, victory at his 91st attempt at the Canadian Grand Prix. The French did inherit the lead from Michael Schumacher just 12 laps from the end after the German was forced to pit with his Benetton stuck in third gear. That race did end, though, with hundreds of fans bursting through the fences to celebrate, with some in the media referring to it as a farce. I can remember that, and the emotion that went into that. You could see it in the fans' faces. He's such a popular guy as well, big Ferrari man, but Jean Alesi, one win. I knew that, but I'd forgotten I knew that, if that makes sense. When I read that, I was like, oh my God, yeah, he only had the one. That is absolutely incredible. But I am going to end on a bit of a downer on this day. I have to. It's a big part of Formula One's history and Mercedes history as well. And on this day in 1955, the worst accident in motor racing occurred during the Le Mans 24-hour. Pierre Levay's Mercedes hit the back of Macklin's Austin Healey, sending the Mercedes flying through the air, where it hit an earth bank at the side of the track, causing parts of the car to scatter throughout the crowd. More than 80 spectators were killed, as was Levay, but the race continued as the authorities feared a backlash from the fans should the race be stopped. Mercedes withdrew from the race 8 hours later and eventually from all forms of factory-sponsored motorsport, with Mercedes as a manufacturer not returning to Formula One until 2010. A horrible day for Le Mans and for Formula One, for motorsport as a whole, and for Mercedes, of course. Absolutely awful. And let's hope, and it just goes to show how far safety's come, the fact the race continued. Let's just hope we never, ever see days like that again. Before I go, though, I do want to have a very quick word about the sort of this week when it comes to F1 Daily. If you do want to disappear now, while I just do this very quickly, thanks for coming along. It's been great to have you with us, and hopefully I'll see you again tomorrow. But for those that are interested, this is the second week of a 2-week trial of F1 Daily. I've said it already, the response we've had has been fantastic. I am going to put a straw poll up in all the video descriptions on Discord, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere basically, for you to vote on Wednesday to let me know what you want going forward, whether you want this to continue, whether you don't want it to continue, if you want it to be tweaked. I'll put some options in there as well, and then I'll make a decision on that towards the end of the week, probably into next week. It might be that F1 Daily gets a couple of days off towards the start of next week, just while I make a decision on that one and tweak a few things that you want tweaking. There is also going to be a change to the scheduling this week for regular videos. As you know, it's been a very busy weekend, and we've got the triple header coming up, so there is going to be no video tomorrow or Wednesday. There wasn't on a Wednesday anyway, but I'm going to be getting rid of the video tomorrow and moving that to Friday instead, just so I can basically have 5 minutes to myself and catch up on some of the admin that comes with a YouTube channel. That's something I was not expecting, to be perfectly honest. So no upload tomorrow, but F1 Daily will be back at 8 p.m. and the same again on Wednesday, 8 p.m. But as I say, no videos again until Thursday. And then I think you've got a video Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then a stream on Sunday as well as streams every day. So the content is still the same amount. I'm just pushing it back by a couple of days to pretty much give me a bit of a break, to be honest, which I know for those that work full-time in really, really difficult jobs, I hate saying that. I really do, having a break, but after the weekend, it was so much content. I just need a couple of days to catch up on stuff and try and get signed up to the Fallout beta as well. It's just a little bit of there for you. I did stay up quite late watching that last night, which was probably quite naughty. 3:45 I went to bed, but there you go. Once again, thank you very much for turning out for F1 Daily. I will be back with F1 Daily tomorrow night at 8 p.m. UK time. Hopefully there'll be some nice big news stories. Maybe a Red Bull decision. Could Renault be forcing them into one? I doubt it, but you never know. We could do with a big one like that. In the meantime, though, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.